All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode 415 for the week of December 7th, 2025. Glad to have you here. If you are listening live to us, always nice to have you join. We are here every week, almost every week at 8 p.m. Central Time on Sundays. We are also coming into our holiday season, and so our schedule will be a little more fluid. So stay tuned both at the end of this podcast, but also on our social channels in order to figure out where we're at and when we are at. I am your host, TBQ Hams, coming to you tonight to talk about a whole lot of new games. For the first week of December, when things are kind of wrapping up, I've got a lot to talk about, and we've got a lot to talk about. Joining me tonight is not our Towmaster 99. I'd like to say he had to quit just like his Bears did, but I will be kind to him because he's not here to defend himself. But joining me is Zeus Damas back. You may know him as Game Logic in and out of his social media handles. But Zeus, glad to have you back, sir.
Thanks a lot, man. Glad to be back.
All right. Well, let's start talking about some games, as we do every week here on the Enough to Keep Going podcast. We start off with some big games or new games of the week. Then we launch into some news stories that caught our attention or that seemed to be worthwhile to either get on our soapbox or to kind of break down and figure out what it actually means, whether that's tech hardware and specs, whether that's industry, financial and employment information, or new games. So we've got always lots to talk about, even when we think we're coming into a slow part of the year. And then in our third segment, we will wrap up anything else that we've been playing this week. We want to talk about, share out, things like that. So first and foremost, I spent my week playing two new games, actually playing a few new games, but the two that I've spent the most time with is the first one came out on Tuesday, and this is .emu. Also by Tribute Games. This is Marvel Cosmic Invasion. I talked about the demo here a couple of months ago. This is by the team that made Shredder's Revenge. .emu also was part of the development team for Absalom, which I talked about earlier in November. This is very much in that Shredder's Revenge kind of couch co-op, online co-op, beat 'em up here. So you're playing, if you're watching some of the video, this is the Asgard level. You're moving through a variety of different levels and stages within Marvel lore. The big bad of this is Annihilus, and you kind of, his creatures come to infect a number of other characters as you play the game. And some of those characters, as you beat them in a boss battle, they will join your side. You take on Venom in a boss battle, and once you beat him, you can play as Venom. Same thing with Jean Grey the Phoenix. So you've got a number of different battles that you go on. And there's an arcade mode, which is pretty much just straight on, and then there's a campaign mode as well. And that campaign mode is where you're unlocking characters. You start off with 8 to 12 of the 16, somewhere around there. So I think there's 4 to unlock. And some of those you've seen through other media. Things like the unlockable characters are Silver Surfer and Marvel. You start off with a wide range of characters. This is a group of characters that is a real mix. Like, you're playing some Avengers. You've got Tony Stark and Captain America. You've got Storm and Wolverine. You have She-Hulk. You've got Cosmic Avenger or Cosmic Ghost Rider. Betty Ray Bill is who I'm playing as here in the video clip if you're watching it. So, and they all have similar movesets in terms of what you'd expect for a beat 'em up and a brawler, where you've got your attack, you've got your melee button, you've got a jump, and while you're in the air, you can do a jump attack depending on your character. Their movement is dependent on that. Here you see with Betty Ray Bill, I can keep his hammer kind of floating and flying and impacting people. If you're Spider-Man or Venom, you can move quickly kind of around the screen. She-Hulk and Beta Ray Bill as heavier characters definitely have a little more heft and weight to them. And you have some flying characters, Iron Man, Storm, who else here? The Phoenix, Jean Grey is also a flying character. It's a nice mix of characters. The combat feels good. You can switch in and out like you could in like a Marvel versus Capcom fighting game. If you, depending on, you have your a bonus meter, kind of like your special meter. You can do kind of combo attacks as you swap in and out of two different people. And then you also have a blue meter that builds up over time through either collecting things or defeating enemies. And that provides the ability to do a special attack for your individual character. Each character also has a range attack or some other different attack. Like in Spider-Man's case, you're flinging webs. In Beta Ray Bill's case, you're throwing your hammer. Jean Grey's case here, she's shooting out fire. If you're Wolverine, you don't have anything to throw, but what you do is you jump onto a character and jump on them, and then you can do a traditional kind of Wolverine stabby with it as well. So it's very fluid in terms of its combat. It feels good. It took me a while to get used to it, I will say. Like, it feels a little bit not as fluid as Turtles. But I think in part of that is because you have so many different characters that have different weights to them, different kind of, physicalness. And so there is a little more clunkiness that comes with some of your heavy characters. The movement of some of the larger characters definitely feels a little slow, but it also makes sense given kind of the weight of your characters. One of the things, just like in Streets of Rage 4 and in Turtles, you can be juggling. You have a combo meter that can build up. I think the highest I've gotten it so far is 150 or so. If you're watching the video here, you see me juggling these two enemies, building up my combo meter. Sometimes you can keep enemies. If you keep them off the ground, even when they're defeated, they kind of fade out here, or a darker color. But if you don't let them hit the ground, you can keep juggling them and build up that combo meter. It doesn't necessarily add a whole lot, but it does, because you can build your special attack back up through combos and through hitting people. It does allow you to kind of recharge some of that as well. You're moving through a variety of stages. First stage is very much a city stage, like many brawlers of the 90s. You've got a stage with sentinels. You've got a stage where you are in the Savage Land, and I think I'm only probably about halfway through the campaign. So you're still kind of moving around and moving through things. Been playing it co-op with my son. Couch co-op is great with it. It's allows you to have, I don't know, just up to 4 players on it, and the same is true for online. Just like Turtles Shredder's Revenge did, that it had an online co-op, so you can you can create a lobby, you can join a random game. There's lots of different ways that you can do that as well. One of the things that it also provides is, for each of in the campaign stage, each level has certain kind of highlighted characters that are set for challenges, and those are usually based on the level. So like in this level, there was a challenge around Beta Ray Bill. It doesn't necessarily, it is just it doesn't necessarily unlock a whole lot that I can tell yet. If you complete all the challenges, there is an unlock, but it's very much just another way to, like in the Sentinel stage, if you play as Storm and Wolverine, those are who the challenges are. So on the stage select screen, they've got some of that aspect there as well. I think the only other piece that I have about this is it is, if you like a brawler, you kind of know what you're getting, right? Like, it is done well. the cast of characters is solid. It's a nice mixture of things, so it's fun to kind of because you can choose two characters, switch between different types to have like a heavy and a light, or so it allows some of that as well. It also doesn't. All that is to say, it's positive. The downside, I think, is it doesn't feel nearly as unique as Shredder's Revenge did when it came out. Like that felt like a return to form. This feels like a continuation. And in some ways, while I'm enjoying it because of the IP and the straight up kind of action aspects of it, it reminds me how much I enjoyed the combat and how deep the combat felt within Absalom. Again, another .emu roguelike one. But that had a much larger series of combos, things like that. One of the things that this game does, though, as well, just like Shredder's Revenge, you do level up your character that, gives you some boosts and stats and things like that. So that's a lot to say for, a 2D brawler that we've all played a dozen different times in different capacities, but it's also a pretty enjoyable experience. Game Logic, any questions, comments there before I jump on to the next one?
So just a couple. So this game obviously makes itself kind of ripe for Easter eggs, nods, fan service, either because of the legacy of TMNT, but also because of the Marvel character hero roster, and obviously we have the MCU going on. Anything like that kind of pop out to you?
Yeah, quite a bit actually. Some deep pulls. In the Savage Land, you get a number of different characters that all make sense within the Savage Land. On the stage where you fight Venom, which is on a spaceship, like a collector's ship, there's all kinds of characters that are sitting in the in containment fields, and so there are. I haven't seen Howard the Duck in terms of, but I've seen, Cosmo, the talking dog or the telepathic dog. Fing Fang Foom is in the background there. There's lots of pulls. I was able to pull a number of them just because of being a Marvel fan, but also playing enough Marvel Snap to know a random, a wide breadth and depth of characters. So in terms of kind of background and characters that come in and out of the story, there's a number of Easter eggs there for people that know. In terms of like Easter eggs as playable characters, I don't think that there's anybody outside of who you see within the roster on the splash screen that kind of tells you who it is. But if this follows along with what they did with Shredder's Revenge had 2, maybe 3 different waves of DLC that were additional. Sometimes they came with levels, but they were always like 2 character packs. So this is clearly ripe for additional characters to play as. Nate's comment here, game seems cool, but a lot of people seem to have a major gripe with having to level each character individually. I can see that. I think it also puts more weight on the leveling than it actually deserves. Like this was the case in Shredder's Revenge as well, but the stat boosts they don't feel super significant, right? At its core, this is still a beat 'em up and brawler, and if you're playing with characters you enjoy, you're going to level them up. If you're playing with characters that aren't level, they don't feel underpowered. Like I don't feel like when I die, and as you saw in that video, I certainly did. It is much more about what you would expect in terms of knowing boss patterns, in terms of knowing where the enemies are, of getting out of the way of damage, more than it was feeling underpowered in terms of a character that's underleveled. And so I think that's a piece of it. It does seem like from what I've seen online, the normal difficulty is not super difficult. Like if you're playing on the hard on the arcade mode, it seems to be a little bit more what you would expect for a quarter muncher. Another comment from Nate here. People basically stated they feel forced to have to play specific characters to get specific unlocks. Again, I think if you are a completionist, yes, those unlocks are there, right? If you want to get those challenges, I think one of the things that are the challenges are there for certain characters. There's also a challenge that's not character specific. And then also within the level, there's like a green cosmic cube that you're collecting, which gives you additional XP and things like that. And that's not tied to a specific character that needs to be present in a level to grab that. That's more about finding it within the level itself. So yeah, I could see where people may feel like forced into playing certain characters, but I will also say that I was 40% through the campaign before I even realized that the challenges were there in terms of playing specific characters to unlock them. So I was just playing who sounded fun to play and who I enjoyed in terms of combat, which I think you can really, you can still enjoy the game that way. If you're trying to unlock everything, yeah, I guess it is going to force you to explore that and come back. And to me, that feels more about trying to build in some replayability than it is trying to force you to choose a specific set of characters in order to play through your first time. Like, play who you want the first time. Play who's fun to you, because I played some characters and like I liked She-Hulk's grab move, but I didn't necessarily like a lot of her other moveset. So it feels like there's some flexibility depending on how you want to be playing it.
But I guess what I don't understand is, like, I don't understand the online community's perspective on that issue. Like, 3 Ultimate Alliance games and you had to level each character, right? That was like the point, right? Was to
That was
get
a
you
long
to,
time. The internet doesn't remember that. Come
no, I
on.
mean, even with fighting games, right? You have to play characters, right? Well, before we got into the fighting game era of where they just gave you all the costumes, right? But like back in the day, you used to have to like earn the skins, right? For each.
Oh yeah, you'd have
each
to
type of
play through the
character
story
unlock.
mode with each character to get those
Yeah.
alternative costumes. Yeah.
So
Right.
I don't know. That's just. I'm not saying they're unjustified. I'm saying that to me, I would expect to have to level each character.
Yeah.
But,
I think one of the things that I've seen in terms of some of the online discourse, or like in reviews about it, is more about the depth of the combat feels a little shallow to something like Absalom, or some other brawlers that are doing more with it. And that feels totally justified, but it also is a totally different type of game, right? Like, this is designed to be a side to side scroller no more than it is a roguelike where you need that evolving skill tree to keep you engaged.
yeah, and I can understand if the unlocks don't feel like a real progression system, and so it feels like you're being asked to grind to unlock the characters for little net result. That I can understand.
Sure. All right. Well, let's thanks, Nate, for the comments and joining into the conversation. Certainly, we appreciate that.
Well,
I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
his last comment. Yeah, I've mainly seen those complaints from streamers, and Nate knows how I feel about streamers.
Well, right, I mean, yes, I could see, like, if you are trying to play this game on a stream to show certain things, you may feel locked into playing certain characters who you may not want to play because you're not as confident in their special abilities, right? Which may not look as good on stream, right? Like, you watch my gameplay, I died plenty, but I'm not here to try to get subscriptions.
Streamers will always find something in a game to complain about, and I can say that having spent 6 to 11 years live streaming myself. So
Fair enough. Well, let's move on to, speaking of 6 to 11 years, let's move on to a game that has been a long time coming. So a few weeks ago, I got a call from Best Buy asking if I wanted to maintain my pre-order, which was placed in 2018 for Metroid Prime 4. And so yes, Metroid Prime 4 came out this week. Again, eventually headed by Retro Studios. It moved around through development hell and got a few restarts, but Metroid Prime 4 is out and here. I am playing on the Switch 2. Actually, I'm playing with a Switch 1 copy with a purchased upgrade for Switch 2. And mainly in part because my 8-year-old, 7-year-old pre-order was for the Switch 1 game that had a significant discount on it. And so I was not going to get that discount if I moved it over to a Switch 2. So, but playing it on the Switch 2, both handheld and dock mode, I'm playing on quality, which is running 4K at 60 frames per second. There's also a performance mode, which is running at 1440 and up to 120 frames per second. HDR looks great. It is really kind of pretty. I'm moving into different biomes as you do within a Metroid Prime game. They look great on a big screen. Playing it on TV, I'm playing it with the Pro controller, which feels really natural. And then on handheld, it takes a minute to adjust again, but also feels really good. Looks really well. Looks nice on the handheld. I do miss some of the HDR, but it looks and plays really smooth even in quality mode. This is. I'm only hour and a half, 2 hours in, so not a huge amount. But I am enjoying. One of the things I had to remind myself is even though you are the opening, as many Metroid games do, right? It throws you in, gives you a little bit of tutorial and kind of sets up the story, but you've got, it hasn't been the same, kind of draining. There is the draining of your powers, but it's not, it doesn't feel super contrived because of the story beats that lead up to it, which teleport you into a whole different space where you spend at least what seems to be a good chunk of the game. But one of the things that the intro really leans into combat. And one of the things that Metroid Prime quickly reminds you of once it opens up to you is this is an exploration game. This is a game about scanning, figuring out some puzzles. Yes, there's combat. The combat actually feels pretty tense because the field of view is relatively small in the first person, and so it has a nice claustrophobic feel to it when you've got a series of enemies kind of swarming you. It's so yeah, it is Metroid Prime. It's more of Metroid Prime. It feels very much like the evolution of what you would expect from Metroid Prime, rather than an evolution of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, which on the Wii was much more of a shooter back in 2808. So
they had to show off the motion controls in the Wiimote.
They did, right? You had to do so, and I think so you get a couple options here of I don't think there's actually a motion control. Haven't tried the mouse control. But again, I think the way the controls are, you don't necessarily need it either, because you have a pretty generous auto lock on. And so you can use your left bumper to auto target or to kind of close in, and it'll iris down onto the enemy that your reticle is closest to. And then you're shooting with right bumper. You've got your scanner, obviously, but then one of the things you get kind of early on in the exploration is some psychic abilities. And so you have the ability to manipulate and interact with doors and some other puzzles that help you navigate through this new world that you're in.
DBQ, the FOV issue, do you feel that was a design limitation or an attempt to conserve compute on the Nintendo Switch 2? Because we all know that Zeus is not a huge fan of claustrophobic FOV.
I'm also coming from somebody who, if there's a slider for FOV, I will push that up to like 110 when it normally is starting at like 90. I like a little bit more distance just for kind of spatial awareness. I could see them answering the question as it accomplishes both, right? It accomplishes this isolated feeling of a Metroid game. You are looking through Samus's helmet, and so you know, narratively, it doesn't make sense for you to have a really wide range of view beyond what you would, but also by the nature of doing that, it limits down what needs to be processing and displaying on the screen as well.
And that's where I will give it a slice of grace. Is there if you let it play back in your head enough times, it makes sense that you're inside
Right.
this helmet. I will still probably be salty about a limited
I think
FOV.
I think the thing that I had to remind myself after the first couple kind of combat fights was they're few and far between. Or at least early in the game, they're few and far between. Like, this is still a game about exploration. And so while when I'm in a tense combat fight, it would be nice to have a little more field of view. Most of the time that I'm spending is spending a whole lot more time in and out of scanner mode than I am, aiming down sights of my arm cannon trying to take something out.
Now in combat, are you getting hit often from things off the screen, and then thereby the FOV would become like a larger issue?
I am, but there's a radar, a well functioning radar. So like when I get hit from something off screen, at first I wasn't using my radar enough. I mean, not using it; it's there, it's on the HUD. But I wasn't referencing it enough, and so once I started to have more radar awareness, rather than wishing I could just see, that started to reduce the issue that I was having as well. And so if I'm paying attention to my radar, I have a good sense of where those enemies are attacking me from. And so that reduces some of that friction as well.
Okay. And then on the exploration piece, I've heard, not full on reviews, but I've heard some commentary. I'd listen to the Min-Max guys. Are the NPCs in the game so chatty that they tell you where to go, and so the exploration motif is kind of dampened?
There was a lot of chatter after the previews of your first, companion character that you get, who is somewhat chatty, is better than I was expecting. Right, I went into it thinking, hearing the worst, and it was not nearly as bad as I expected it to be. Like, we've all played video games where a chatty companion character can make or break. It fits within his character. Also, from what I've read through interviews, those companion characters get sidelined relatively quickly throughout the 15 to 20 hours of the game. And so, if you're pulling up a map or looking at, they end up being kind of hubs for different features. And so if you're pulling up that feature, they'll be chatting with you. But if you are just out in the world, like, I will say the first character, who is the one that's gotten the most kind of hate around him online, yes, he was chatting, but it was also and you've got some volume settings. So I didn't find it too disturbing because I was spending my mental energy not paying attention to what he was saying, but looking around trying to figure out where I'm going within the environment. Right. Like, so, and again, I'm playing on a TV or in handheld without headphones. So maybe if you're in headphones, it feels a little more dominant, but you definitely have some sliders where you could reduce that down. To me, it hasn't taken away. This game has a good sense of isolation, and having those companions fits within the narrative based on how that isolation occurred, of being kind of transported out to a different world, which isn't a spoiler because it happens right in the intro and is in plenty of other spaces. Because of that, it makes sense that anybody in that space with you when that event happened might be there as well. So, but you're finding them, it's not like it feels more chatty than any other Metroid Prime has, but also, as someone who lived through Metroid the Other M, this is nothing, right? I mean, we've had bad chatty experiences within Metroid, and this this is not. It feels much more a whole lot more conservative than what we got with Other M or even Fusion, which didn't have voice chat but just had a lot of text to run through. So
Very cool. Yeah, as of right now, currently thinking about picking it up next week.
yeah, I would say like if you enjoyed the original Metroid Prime, this will be something that you'll enjoy. Also, if it's not something that you enjoyed because it's much more of a exploration game than it is an action game, then this isn't necessarily going to change your mind either. So it's, if you were looking for more Metroid Prime, this is it, right? I think it's it finally after 7 years of stops and starts. So as Nate said in the chat, right? So glad that Metroid Prime 4 is out so people can stop fascinating about how amazing it's going to be, and wrestle with the fact that it's not a perfect game, but it also is not a terrible game. And it's, depending on what you're bringing in terms of your expectations and your genre preferences, is going to land differently for different people. So, all right. Those are my two games. I even dressed accordingly today, bringing in my Metroid Christmas shirt. So that gives me enough to talk about. But we're going to move on here to our news headlines for the week. And let's start off with some downers. Let's start off with a couple layoffs that were announced. Again, this is not anything new. It's been multiple years of rounds of layoffs. Actually, this is not even anything new for the first news story that's coming out here, because Eidos Montreal had some layoffs earlier this year. Back in April, they laid off 75 workers, and now they are laying off some more staff, shifting to, so this article comes from Game Developer. It was picked up multiple different places. There was a report on Insider Gaming that they are shifting more to a support studio for Grounded and Fable, as they're working with Microsoft on Fable 2, whatever Fable is going to be called, is still in that pipeline of, let's hope it exists before Microsoft decides to cancel it again, because it's not going to hit 30% revenue. But also Grounded 2 is out. Grounded 2 is the follow-up to Obsidian's, and it's Obsidian's. So yeah, so that is it's too bad, right? I think Eidos Montreal, I enjoyed many of their games over the years. The relaunch of the Tomb Raider series, even as we're talking about Marvel characters, even the Eidos Montreal, no, wait, that was Crystal Dynamics, was the Avengers again. So,
well, they were the ones supporting the initiative as well, weren't they?
Crystal Dynamics was, yes, not Eidos Montreal, and so I get them confused because they were both Embracered at one point in time. So then the second story is a game studio that I haven't talked a whole lot about, a game that came out this year that we haven't talked at all about. That game is Rec Nation, but this game studio is it is, what's the name of this studio? Because it's Three Fields Entertainment. And the reason I pulled this is Three Fields Entertainment was created and headed by Alex Ward of Burnout fame, in terms of one of the developers and designers on Burnout when it was in its peak. And Three Fields has gone on to try to capture that in different ways with smaller projects. They've done a couple different kind of car, a couple years ago, they had a game that was very much like, whatever the puzzle mode that used to be in Burnout, right? Like you'd go into this big open space and you try to wreck something and rack up your combos. They created a whole game around that. They created a game just on the driving aspect. They had a mini golf game, and this year they came out with Rec Nation, actually just this fall on October 20th. But so they put the entire studio on redundancy notice. So this is a story out of Game Developer again, and this is a studio in the UK. And because of UK regulations and laws, this is one of the things that you need to do before you can lay off people, is that you need to kind of provide these notices ahead of time. And so it's setting up a space that doesn't bode well for the future of the studio. So let's move on to another news story, which is a little more positive, I'll say, after some layoff announcements here at the end of 2025.
Is it
Earlier?
Is it though? Is it?
I would. It could be. I think. Right. I think the question is how much development is being spent on this versus the main projects, right? So the news story that we're talking about is the announcement of MLB The Show for mobile. Whether or not it's going to be good is a whole different question. What the monetization ends up looking like. But yes, MLB The Show for mobile is out now in select regions. It's kind of in a beta stage, as many mobile games do. So I haven't had a chance to find anybody online that's playing it in those regions to see what that monetization looks like. It looks like it's going to be running in portrait mode rather than landscape mode, which feels really tight. Like I don't know how you do the entire MLB The Show experience within a touchscreen capacity. You know,
I can
go
see
ahead.
portrait mode working for like the pitcher
For batting,
batter
yeah,
battle
and pitching,
right?
yep. The
Like that
fielding
hyper
piece
focus.
feels,
Yeah.
yeah, no, right? Like for batting, even in the release video, the batting it makes sense, right? You don't need all that side depth. You just need part of your character and the strike zone. Same thing with pitching. But fielding, I feel like maybe fielding gets a little more automated potentially in this. So it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, this definitely stood out to me. I mean, we've talked about the show plenty of times. One of the other show news stories from 2025 that we never really hit on because it hasn't officially been announced, but Sony San Diego also had they were hiring over the summer. They had some job postings for PC development. So hopefully that means that the full-on show, not a mobile version, is coming to PC as well. Given that the timing of those announcements in terms of job openings would not translate into a mobile game within 5 months. So we'll see what this looks like. I would assume that it's going to launch in springtime as spring training starts, or at least around the start of the season, around the same time that MLB does. Outside of kind of concerns about how it plays or how it looks, any thoughts here, Zeus?
The strangest thing to me is that this is apparently being done by Sony San Diego.
I saw that too. I would have thought it would have been farmed out.
Yeah, I would have thought a farmed out, maybe farmed out, probably because I would have thought that PlayStation would have had zero interest in doing this. But they do have a mobile studio, and so if not outsourced, why not its own internal mobile studio? And so that makes me think that there's a reason for that, and I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe there's an intention for there to be some synergy eventually between the mobile version and the console and PC version. My biggest concern
right?
is
Some type of Diamond Dynasty where your card packs carry over between. Yeah, go ahead. Your biggest concern?
Yeah, or maybe some continuity, right? Where you could actually, play a game in a reduced scope, right? But it's 162 baseball
I was
games.
just saying, right?
Like,
Take your way through the season would be nice. Yeah.
right. Being someone who, as you well know, over the decade plus that we've been podcasting, who insists on, even though he knows he's never going to finish, playing the entire game and playing the entire season. And now, finally, in my aged years, I am playing a couple games and then like simulating like 10, right? So yeah, it would be neat. My biggest concern is the distraction, right? Um, Major League Baseball has pushed the multi-platform strategy, on PlayStation, and now like there was a point where it made like a skosh of sense for a sports property, right? Okay, put it on Xbox, put it on Nintendo Switch, and there were things that were definitely good for that. Like, yeah, I love having it on the Nintendo Switch 2, and being able to take it on the go. Um, it was neat for the couple of years that it was in Game Pass. Um, it's unknown how well that worked, and if the put it on Xbox, put it in Game Pass, then take it out of Game Pass. I don't know if that was an actual deliberate strategy, or if that was more because of like tension, right? Like, hey,
Yeah, it's hard to say, and it also happens to coincide with kind of the decline and downward trajectory of sales of Xbox as a platform in this generation as well.
right? Like, hey, we're fine putting it over there, but we want people to buy it, right? Since you guys aren't growing subscriptions,
Your market
right?
share is not huge enough to warrant that. Yep.
Yeah. And so and putting it on PC makes great sense. I have been lamenting the fact that there's not a baseball, like
It
an
really,
MLB game
yeah.
on
Outside, I
PC.
mean, outside of something like Out of the Park, which is more simulation and management.
And I've been playing Super Mega Baseball for the last couple of iterations on PC. Which has a surprising amount of depth despite like the cartoony,
Oh yeah,
right,
those games have always had
character
lots of
models.
depth to them. Yep.
Yeah. But it'll be nice to get MLB there, with all the fidelity and the graphics. But I mean, that's not a small lift, right? And I don't know if Sony San Diego, well, I mean, that rec was for Sony San Diego. It wasn't for Nixus. So I assume Nixus will be helping out, but
Mhm.
this is a lot of load that Sony San Diego is shouldering. And I don't I don't want anything I don't want anything to like get wobbly and fall off the plate. With regards to this French game, because I buy it every year,
Sure.
So we'll see
Well,
how it
and
goes.
I wonder, like, and I don't know enough, like, how much of what their previous builds were on PlayStation 3, Vita, even early PlayStation 4, like, how much of that can help as a building block on mobile, right? Because this is not. But I also wonder, from an MLB perspective, there are plenty of other mobile games that MLB already has a license with, right? Like whether it's Home Run Derby or plenty of other baseball gotcha games that are paying for an MLB license. What from MLB's perspective, what does this bring that it in terms of market share that it's not already capturing on the mobile space?
Well, because I mean, my belief is it's the PlayStation brand, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like
I think that makes sense.
what you're saying is there's baseball stuff out there, but I think there's scratch to be had from this 130 million people player base that's going to grow when they put this thing over on PC. Plus, now you have like Switch and Xbox players, and every one of those people has a phone.
Yeah.
So like I said, if there's some type of intended connectivity, I think that's where you could get something that goes harder than. I mean, no, I'm just going to make an assumption here. Goes harder than some type of like, Gdunk, like candy bar vending machine level, like mobile game of
Yep.
baseball, right? That
All right.
is,
I've spent my stamina. Now I need to pay to. Yep. No, I understand. Well, let's talk about that dominant PlayStation brand and their product with the PlayStation 5, which has still continues to be on sale in America. And your next news story is about how successful its Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Thanksgiving, week before, week after ongoing sale of PlayStation seems to be.
yeah. So this news story over on Push Square by Sammy Barker. PS5 dominates USA and UK on Black Friday, comfortably outsells all its rivals. Uh, In the aftermath of data from the UK this Black Friday, we now know how the PS5 performed in the USA through the week of 30 November. According to Circana analyst Matt Piscatella, the PS5 was the best-selling console of the week, accounting for an incredible 47% of the sales. The Switch 2 finished in second position with 24% of the sales, while the family-friendly camera-based gaming device, the Next Playground, finished third with 14% of the sales.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
go
I
ahead.
want to ask the obvious question here. Like, one, I'm glad that it's selling so well. I'm just looking at a Best Buy site right now, and they're still on sale at Best Buy, right? Like, things are still actively on sale of your controllers, your Portal, all your different slices and varieties of PlayStation 5, whether that's the Pro, the Slim, disc, or digital. But it's also the only console that got a discount over this time period. And so while I'm not discounting the fact that it sold well, I'm glad that it sold well, but we didn't get much of a discount on the Switch 2. There was a couple times where it got maybe a $50 discount, and Xbox has not touched theirs at all. I think one of the ongoing stories around the holiday sales between Xbox and PlayStation is that you can get a PlayStation 5 Pro on sale now for the same price as the Series X. So I think that is it only solidifies PlayStation's space in the market and the marketplace in terms of kind of penetration into the market, and the fact that people are still buying them to the point that it is selling as well as it has, I think sets Sony up. uh, you know they're in a good spot where even if they're starting to look ahead about what a PlayStation 6 looks like, their market share here means that we're going to continue to see PlayStation 5 consoles for a long time to come.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and there are people who are of your mind, right? That like, hey, it's the only thing that got a discount. Um, that like is a part that like propelled it right to the sales activity. Um, and so in that dialogue, right, there's a bit of chicken and egg, right? Um, why did this happen in the first place? Well, this happened because the next nearest competitor, Xbox, has not experienced a market response that would have allowed any type of real battle to have occurred over Black Friday. Um, why was the Xbox not discounted? Well, because even if you discount it, which they have done in previous holiday seasons, you could get a Series S for like 199, even lower, I think, in some cases.
Yeah, I think 199 is probably pretty close, 189, but that was a number of years ago, right? Maybe that was its second year of existence. But yeah, they definitely they've discounted the X before around holiday times as well.
Yeah, so and despite those things, despite that value prop, despite the value prop of Game Pass, despite the value prop of Play Anywhere, like despite the value prop of like all of the games that have been published from Microsoft Publishing this year, that has not altered the trajectory of the unit sales of this thing to a point where discounting it would have necessarily made sense. And so, it's all of the things that have proceeded before that brought us to this point. It's not that PlayStation slashed its price, so therefore that's why it outsold the Xbox, right? It's that the Xbox was not selling and has not sold at parity this entire generation, and now we're at this point. And what this point actually really looks like, if you look back at history, is very much, although PlayStation is not doing these price cuts permanently, they're not. What they're doing is they're taking opportunity shots around holiday seasons, and for various reasons, the 20-year 25-year anniversary, which surprisingly coincided like very close to the Nintendo Switch 2 launch, right? So, they're taking advantage of these shots to move additional units, but when you step back a little bit, it looks very much like, if you remember the way things were between PlayStation and Sega during the original PlayStation and the Sega Saturn time frame, where Sega was struggling with the Saturn, and PlayStation would just be like, just cut the price by $50. And then
Yep.
Sega would try and come back with it, and then they would cut it again. Like, and part of that, I'm sure part of that was manufacturing efficiencies, right? In the 90s, which was a different time, but also it was because of market dominance.
Oh, it's very much about market. I mean, it's the story of the PlayStation and the Saturn from the very get-go, right? The initial announcement of the PlayStation was simply a price tag on the same day that the Saturn Stealth launched. And Sony has been very good at this, I think. And your point is spot on. Like, I'll admit, like, yes, I simplifying it to say it's the only thing on sale, so people bought it, but it's also recognizing that it is the strongest piece of hardware in the market space right now as well.
Yeah, and I didn't think you were trying to do that, DBQ. I was trying to kind of verbalize a separation between what you were saying and what some other people saying who are.
I'll get upset with you about something else tonight, not this.
Right.
So it'll be fine.
The big thing to take away for me for this year is I think what we have witnessed going back over the last year, because I think this started kind of last holiday season, we've witnessed a multiple number of hold my beer moments from PlayStation, right? And I mean, that's the
That's a great way to say it, right? Like, oh, well, somebody else is going to try something. Hold on a minute.
Look, I mean, in the face of like tariffs and RAM prices and all these things that are going to, like, it seems like every time we get like the cloud of doom and gloom, like everybody's going to raise prices, everybody's going to stop subsidizing. Look at the Nintendo Switch 2, blah 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 blah. PlayStation just says, "Hold my beer," and they may cut their prices on stuff. And yes, they've played around with regional price increases, in other places, but I mean, but overall, they've done this two-step, and the way I think consumers feel about it is they see these things go on sale, and then you strike at the opportunity, right? Like I bought my PS5 Pro during State of Play, and then right after that, the price went up. And of course, what do I feel? I feel lucky that I got my PS5 Pro, right? While prices were low, and then lo and behold, you think that's over. Like, there's no way in my mind that I thought I would see a price cut on these consoles in the holiday season. And and the thing I will give to Nintendo, the one thing Nintendo did do is we thought that the Mario Kart bundle was over, and they brought it back for the holiday season, which I thought was super. And it's $50 less.
Yeah,
which
right.
I thought
They brought
was
it
super.
at $4.99, which is a great space for them. Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about something that doesn't feel like a great space. As one of the other news stories this week, covered in multiple different outlets, but the one I picked up here is from Game Developer. This is that the planned buyout of EA, which will come from private investment from Saudi Arabia's private investment, from Silver Lake and Infinity Partners, that the fine print, basically, that Saudi Arabia's PIF fund, private investment fund, will own 93%. Or if you're looking at this headline, 93.4%. That Silver Lake and Infinity Partners will own about 5.5% and 1% there as well. So this is, to me, this was a news story that is part of why I have some real concerns and had some real concerns with this buyout when it first came to fruition and announcement, in terms of what amount of control and influence that Saudi Arabia would have within EA. And now looking at how much of a dominant partner they will be, I can't even really call the other two partners if you're owning 93% of the entire thing, right? Like, they are not only the majority, but the clear dominant. So the ability to have the ability within their ownership to certainly influence things if they would want to. And what we don't know is how much they will want to. And I think that this is, there's been dialogue about this in terms of what that means in terms of content and narrative within first player experiences and story based games. I still am on the boat of, I think people are really really being hopeful that story based and narrative games still exist under this new EA, and that we're not simply just looking at sports titles that can churn out annual profits, along with things like Battlefield and The Sims. So,
I would
in Game Logic, I saw your smirk there, so I'm going to give you the mic.
I would say, well, it wasn't a smirk. It was worry for people who hold that hope. I What I firmly believe is that we will not see another Hazelight Studios game from EA. I think I'm hoping that Joseph right now is like seeking a different publisher.
Yeah, I would hope so too, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
I also feel bad because what I will say as a person who plays these franchises, I feel completely confident that I'm going to still continue to get Madden, Formula One, and EA Football Club. So, now, what exactly happens with like the racing stuff? It'll be interesting. They're taking the year off next year. I'm gonna go with huge speculation and believe that was an EA move, and I think that actually shifting underneath this ownership, they're gonna push them to get back to an annualized release cadence on Formula One. I think,
sure,
maybe
makes sense.
because Saudi hosts a Formula right
Sure,
hosts
right. Makes a lot
F1
of
race.
sense for F1 to continue. That is definitely feels a logical connection. Mhm.
Yeah, and I know Hero Down Under. I'm not sure. I assume that they have a soccer. I mean, I know that they host a bunch of soccer games and soccer tournaments and stuff. I assume they have their own soccer team. I've never played a Saudi Arabian uh, football club in FC, but I assume they
They
have some.
exist. They're there.
Yeah,
Yeah, they definitely are there. Yep. I've flipped through the flags and the map enough to, or the teams. I will say I'm on the other end of this piece. Like, as somebody who has been playing Madden for 25 years or more, and somebody who has been playing an online franchise with friends for the last 5 years, over iterations, I've already thrown in my notice of I'm going to buy one more Madden before this purchase goes through, and then I'm off the EA train. So I feel good about giving them some money before it goes through, but I don't feel great about supporting. It. I would be glad to be proven wrong and come back if what they're producing is something that I want to support.
Okay, so that was the question I was at. This is not and I wouldn't have any problem if this was a moral issue for you. So it's not a moral issue for you. It's your concern that the properties aren't going to be handled well, and you don't want to be the guinea pig for that.
I wouldn't say it's a moral issue. I think it is I would say there's a little more political than moral.
Okay.
Right? Like, I don't need to be supporting a government that has plenty of questionable things, which I guess you could count that as moral, but at the same time, like, I also am not going to say that I'm always going to judge somebody by their previous actions, right? If we've seen a number of years where, part of what Saudi Arabia has been trying to do with the Gulf League, with all kinds of other things, is not only diversify their investments because of oil, but also put them in a space that doesn't cause people to have moral objections. And so I think you can do that on your surface and still take actions that people may object to. But I am open to seeing a change. But so, yeah, I would say it's walking up to that moral line, but I don't feel too high and mighty about it. It's much more about, I am not going to spend my money to support another government that I don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I came through across on your end. So my initial entry was understanding that it was not a moral issue for you. So that's what I was trying to frame it as.
Sure.
But
Yep.
out of concern that you didn't feel that the properties were to be handled. So, and again, I'm not. This isn't an accusatory line of questioning. I'm trying to kind of.
I'm okay with accusatory. See, we told everybody we were going to get into an argument about something. So
no, because look, my personal feeling is, and we've talked about this before, right? Every single one of us as a consumer picks and chooses our times when we're going to take a stand on a thing, right? And because I don't buy Hogwarts Legacy, that doesn't make me some more moral game like consumer than like
sure.
somebody else, because somebody else is going to take a stand about it. And we had the stuff with Activision and Call of Duty, right?
Yep.
And lots of people, yes, yea, verily made the choice to not buy Call of Duty. I didn't personally make that choice, right? I didn't personally stop buying Apple products when all like the China stuff was going on, but I did stop buying Apple products for a couple of years during the Samsung lawsuit, because I felt like from an IP and a patent perspective, I felt like Apple was being ridiculous and they went kind of over the line. Some people are taking that stand now with the App Store stuff and saying that, you know, they're being ridiculous, and like the judge has clearly told you to open the store. Like, stop fighting them, right? And the same goes for Google. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I am trying to like, for this scenario, like just try and kind of not true things up, but just kind of make sure we understand and frame it right for the audience. So Saudi also has investments in Nintendo, Koei Tecmo, Capcom, Nexon, and Take-Two. So is it you're making this choice about EA just because of how much, right? Because they're taking over a controlling stake?
Yes, I think that for me that is the difference, right? Like, I don't have it makes sense that they would be invested in a very diverse range of things. My concern is much more of the controlling stake, and not only a controlling stake, but 93%, right? To be the dominant owner of what was of, I don't disagree with, EA going private. I can see a benefit to that from like a financial piece, but also, and I think Hero Down Under, the comment Hero had of, I don't see any, having any government, any country, controlling a game studio. I guess I would raise my eyebrows about that, even if it was the United States, right? Like, it feels like it is the potential of influence on either end, just from a creative space, is it is a really blurry line and really easy to walk up and through.
So, and again, I'm throwing these things out just as more information for the conversation.
No, let's have this conversation, because we're going to have it again in another week when we do our superlatives, probably. So we might as well get some of it out here so we can just reference it.
Yeah. So Hero mentions, like, I don't all governments are bad guys in my eyes, all of them US, China, Saudi, Australia. So the Saudi situation to me is weird, because this is an economy, this is a nation whose notion of its ruling family and its economy are intertwined. Like, they are not separate. And so there is no notion, right, really, of like a private corporate, right, of a private corporation in Saudi, like making a bigger, like it would be somehow intertwined with like the ruling family. By the same token, right, some of the countries Hero points out, and again, here I'm not pushing back on you, I'm just, again, flowering this conversation out for more marinating, right? In China, by rule of law, every corporation must cooperate with the Communist Party. And almost every technology company must specifically cooperate with Chinese intelligence. China has significant control and supervision over those Chinese companies, such as Tencent, who are heavily invested in the video game industry. So there's that. and then and then for the US part, like, it's how do you feel about, not you, but like if anybody considering this, like, how do you feel about like the US investment in like Intel, right? Which is
Mhm. Yep. No, I think
weird,
that's a
you know?
yeah, I feel like that's a difficult spot too, right? Like there's the potential for it is a it's a loaded, I mean, you may not necessarily pull that trigger, but you have certainly loaded the chamber.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting thing. I think I can't remember. I was on Thrifty, who I think his channel's name is the aggressively average gamer. I was on his podcast I think Wednesday night. Um and a couple of things I mentioned in addition to, like, I wouldn't expect to get another Hazelight studio game out. Um then I and then I wonder about like all of the other things, like in terms of like the EA, forget what I think it was called, the EA partner program.
Mhm.
So like the
Yep.
thing that gave us
Lost in Random and
Unraveled.
mhm.
And we always remember this game. We can never remember the name of it, but the game from the French ladies company about like the girl on the boat dealing with like anxiety.
Sea of Solitude.
Yes, and mental
Mhm.
health issues. Yeah. So like I
Yep.
mean, I just don't know how much of that
No,
we're
I
gonna see.
don't believe that any of those. I mean, this is where I would love to be proven wrong, right? Like I would love to see that what Saudi Arabia allows is for a continued breadth of creativity. Um, and I'll be glad to be proven wrong. But I feel perfectly fine about not spending any money until I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
all right, well, let's move from as Nate says, it's all getting very Cyberpunk Corporation. Let's move from one conglomerate into what becomes a new one, with the announcement that Netflix is going to be acquiring Warner Brothers Studios, Warner Brother Games. So this dropped on Friday. Uh, I pulled the article from Game Developer because it was more focused on the game studios in terms of NetherRealms and Rocksteady. Um, but there's all kinds of dialogue and questions that we could go into in terms of media. Game Logic and Zeus and I had a great conversation when this was announced around what this looks like for DC in terms of publishing and things like that. But yes, in terms of video game focus, so the acquisition, the $82.7 billion acquisition of Warner Brothers, which again really makes me feel like in this economy, Microsoft sure overpaid for Activision Blizzard King. Like, if you can get the entire Warner Brother portfolio and everything that's underneath it for 82, that's a much more diverse package than than Activision Blizzard King. Hero Down Under says, if not Netflix, then who? Right. I think there were bids out there by Skydance, Paramount.
Paramount, yeah.
Yeah, right. And
And
Paramount
Dis
is now
and
owned by Skydance.
I thought Disney too.
I didn't see a Disney one.
There were
I
3
know that
people in the running besides, I
okay, so
mean, there was
maybe
Netflix, Paramount, and one other one. I can't remember who the other one was.
yeah. I'll cross check that at some point here. But yes. So again, this is early. This is just coming. But it does verify and confirm the fact that the game studios that were underneath Warner Brothers and part of them are coming along with this deal as well. Granted, there's a lot less game studios under Warner Brothers than there was even a year ago, as they, shuttered things like multiverses and announced that they were going to mainly focus on Harry Potter, Disney, and DC properties. So we will see what this all looks like. I'm sure we'll have more news stories to talk about. Zeus, what are your thoughts on this one?
Oh man, this is I love this. Like, I love this topic because there's so many channels to go down with this thing. Um, I know Hero says, if not Netflix, then who? I was mentioning in a Discord, which I think Hero you're part of. I haven't looked back at the Discord recently. I mentioned that it was very surprising when I started pulling threads on this that Netflix's market cap is like 443 billion, and Disney's is like 118 billion. Like they are smaller than Netflix and significantly so, which just amazed the heck out of me. So unfortunately, the regulatory part of me is like, well, hold on a second, time out. This is the same thing as the ATVI Microsoft merger, which I know DBQ on certain economic and regulatory topics we disagreed on, but for me, this is we're allowing the number one like market cap company in video streaming to now acquire what I think HBO Max was Warner Discovery was either number 3 or number 6. I can't remember, but they're in the top 10. So we're allowing yet again consolidation.
Yep.
So look, I mean, there's no question we're going to be paying for this. In fact, I can absolutely. I went through this with Brap earlier today. I can absolutely guarantee what's going to happen. What's going to happen, and I'm a Netflix subscriber. I'm also an HBO Max subscriber. I know that I'm going to get an email right when this thing closes, like a couple months later, that says, if you are an HBO Max and a Netflix subscriber, your accounts will be merged, and you will now become a subscriber to Netflix Ultimate, right, at a higher price. If you are a subscriber to just Netflix but not HBO Max, you will now become that your account will remain the same, and you will now be a Netflix Premium subscriber or whatever the middle tier is, right? And then there'll be like the ad-supported tier. So I mean, so we're going to be paying higher prices, and we're going to be paying higher prices at an accelerated rate than we would have been had this merger not occurred. That all being said,
I think that's absolutely correct. Yep.
From a creative perspective, I'm not going to go down that path because we'll be here all night. From a creative perspective, I am excited about the notions of, all of the DC properties coming in under the Netflix umbrella. I'm a little salty that because I'm watching Arrow right now on Netflix, which is a CW show, which was a CW show, but came out of the Warner Studios. It's about to leave Netflix on December 17th, and I'm like, guys, why are you doing this? Like, you're gonna own this stuff like in a few months. Like, just leave it there. So it's a minor inconvenience, but like, and then DBQ and I had a very deep conversation, which I won't go into tonight, about what happens when Netflix owns DC Comics, and DC Comics digitally right now are on Comixology, which is owned by Amazon, and so when you're a Comixology subscriber, you get a discount on DC Comics, which means somebody's getting less money. I don't know who, but point being, Amazon gets a cut of any digital comics that are sold. And when you look at how Netflix operates, Netflix, as a great for instance, is not an Amazon Prime channel. So unlike HBO Max and Paramount, you can't subscribe to Netflix as an Amazon Prime member. So I would probably guarantee you that if you're on HBO Max and you're subscribed as a channel underneath your Amazon Prime account, that's probably going to change. Okay, on to video game stuff. I actually think this is good. I think those Warner Studios are now going to have financial backing, and they're not going to be. I mean, they're going to be under pressure to be fiscally responsible, but I don't think they're no longer going to be living in a regime where like they literally have an entire. What is the full movie that Warner Brothers had? The Batgirl movie. They're not going to have an entire Batgirl movie in the can, edited, done, ready to release to theaters, and then suddenly, have that yanked out from under them for reasons. So
they'll just put it on streaming, and
at
least that's the thought, right?
Yeah, I mean, so hopefully we'll get some good games out of this. Although I think it's going to take a while. I think there's going to be a serious restructuring on how those studios look. Rocksteady versus the Warner Brothers studio versus I don't know who's the studio who did Gotham Knights.
Yeah, that was Warner Brothers Montreal.
Okay, and then the Hogwarts studio. So be interesting how it all comes together. But I think eventually we'll get some good stuff out of it. Rocksteady may claw some creative freedom back. So, and then these things, we may see synergy between like these games and and television shows is what I would expect.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that Netflix has an interest in the gaming space. They invested in game development for mobile games, and kind of started to kind of shed that over the past couple of years when it wasn't as lucrative, or it took a lot longer than they were hoping for potentially, or was not as quick and as easy as putting together a new streaming movie. So Netflix just recently relaunched kind of their gaming space with a number of kind of similar to what Amazon did with phones as controllers in the Jackbox space. So I could see Netflix being supportive of those, of kind of continuing those studios and giving them some space. Be really interesting to see how this all happens, right? As Hero Down Under says, studios all get shut down except 2, right? And so what does that restructuring that you're mentioning look like? Like, again, these are speculations. We don't have anything more than this is moving forward. So we'll see where this goes. The 2 studios, the 2 companies that were looking to buy Netflix, it was Paramount and Comcast. Comcast was the other one.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I follow everything Hero said. I think what Hero is saying is that he hopes they're selling off the gaming division. I feel pretty strongly that's not going to happen, because quite honestly, like, this is the one bid where the video game component makes perfect sense. Paramount and Comcast have no ability to run a video game business.
No, where
at stock.
Netflix, yeah, certainly has an expressed interest in it. Yeah.
And a start and a synergy where it makes sense.
Mhm.
You look at all the comic book properties that they've had come through their house, where that I mean, Netflix to me is the home of comic book stuff that is not DC or Marvel today. Like, all of the properties from like Image and IDW and Dark, like all of them, when they've gotten licensed, right, they're coming to Netflix. I think the only one Amazon has landed has been The Boys. So kind of,
They had the another Mark Miller one. Trying to remember what it was. No, that was Netflix that had the. Anyhow, yes, The
yeah,
Boys is pretty much, and Invincible was
yeah.
Amazon as well.
So I
Yep.
mean, so that starts to make sense, right, with a video streaming service. And then you look at their go-to-market approach for games, right? And I can see you going to a Netflix page, and having that game tier, right, which they put like right below your lower eye level, right? So the big video streaming stuff is at the top, and then that next row down is where they've been sticking games, but now they're going to be big AAA titles. Then it's going to be interesting to see, well, what does that look like? It absolutely, I suspect heavily, it absolutely makes sense that they will get into video game cloud streaming as well. And
Oh yeah,
then,
I mean that feels like right there, ready to go. Yep.
yeah, I mean they've been the largest. I guess next to MLB, they've been the largest benefactor, as far as I can tell, from that video streaming technology that was innovated and started at MLB. So, this I think this has the potential to be a very big deal. And I think it has a potential to be a very big deal in the video game space eventually. It's
Yeah,
going to
right.
take some time, but
We'll see the impact of it in the film and TV space a whole lot sooner than we'll see it in the video game space in terms of what it looks like. But lots of potential. All right. Well, again, for the first week of December, we had plenty of news to talk about. Game Logic, we're going to round off here and head into our third segment in terms of our rundown. I got a couple to hit on, but I want to start with you. You have played Clair Obscura on multiple different platforms. As somebody who, I am somebody that has only played it. I went back to it over Thanksgiving holiday just to give a little more poke at it. and realize that it's a beautiful game, and I know I want to spend more time with it next year. And but I'm also curious because I just said it's a beautiful game, but you're running it on Xbox Series S, and why the S? Out of all the platforms that you have,
let's not get carried away with the Xbox slander. Like, it's still a beautiful game on Xbox.
no, but you have it. It's but I mean, to me, as someone who I've thought about picking it up to play on Steam Deck, and part of the conversation is like, yeah, it's not doesn't look great,
Yeah.
but you've got a Series X. You will talk about playing a game on Series X later in another 5 minutes. So why did you choose?
That's a typo. That's a typo. That should say
Okay.
Series X. Sorry.
Okay.
Now I get the joke.
I'm going to take my rant back. And yes. Okay. Yeah, it looks great on Series X. I love it. That's excellent.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, I'm on my, I don't know how many of multiple playthroughs. I have 2 copies on PC. I have a copy on PlayStation 5, and I have a copy on the Series X now. And I'm really enjoying it the same way I always do. I'm picking up on things. It's one of those games where you definitely pick up on more and more and more. Like, as you guys are, like, today I found a mime that I've never seen before, just because when you come, so at the beginning of the game, you pass this Nevron that you have a conversation with, and then you go into kind of like an abandoned house. And when you come out of that house, you can go left or you can go right. I think everybody kind of knows what I'm talking about who's played the game. I've gone to the left before, and I have taken on that Lancelier, but I've never gone past right where I've defeated him. And today I went all the way out because you can look out on the edge and see that there's no like chroma or anything there. There's no pickup there. But today, for whatever reason, on a whim, I just went out to that edge, and as I got to the edge, I didn't even see it, but I felt like the little haptic buzz telling me that there was a grapple point near, and I was like, "What?" And so I took this grapple point, and then you swing out like over several cliffs, and I'm like, "Where is this thing taking me?" Um, and then you could see it, right? Because you kind of you're you're on this cliff walk with the cliff off to your left, and as you kind of wind up this cliff walk, you look down to your right, and it's kind of standing out on this wide base column that's rising into the air, and connected to this cliff walk after you go down and take a turn is a mime. And I'm like, oh wow. And at first, as I was approaching him, I was like, should I be doing this? Like, I'm because it's very early in the game. You're in like single digit number of levels. And I'm like, I don't know that this is smart, but I'm feeling it. So I went down there and of course beat the mime. And I forget. I think there was at least one. I know I picked up like one weapon level up, or a new weapon or something out of it, in addition to like all the XP. So I was like, dope. And then in a senior moment, because I typically go when I go beat the first boss, and then I come back. So one of the non-mandatory bosses, the first one is a chromatic Lancelier. And these non-required bosses are the type where, like, if your character gets hit with them one time, they go down. And there's a number of these throughout the game. And typically what I do is I go and I beat the first boss, and then I come back and take on that chromatic Lancelier. And then from then on, like, I go ahead and I take on those optional bosses whenever I see them. But that first one, like, is not a good idea to take that one on, like, when you're like very low level until you get past the first boss. But in a senior moment, I forgot to come back this time, and I went all the way down to where you recover like your first additional party member, and then you're at a party of 3. She's a pretty powerful character. So as I was about to wrap up my session, I was like, oh crap, I didn't go back and fight the chromatic Lancelier. I'm like, I'm gonna go back and take this dude on with 3 people now. So I went back and had fun with that battle. So yeah, having a good time, really enjoying it.
Nice. I love the fact that you have found a game that has spoken to you so significantly that you are investing multiple playthroughs on multiple platforms. Like for what we do in terms of churning through games, both in terms of feeling the breadth and depth of the medium, but also to provide content to talk about. The fact that you have latched onto this game is really cool and great to see. And it's fun when something speaks to somebody. So a game that I have been spoken to about many times over a decade has been Destiny. And this week, Destiny 2 Renegades launched. This is the Star Wars themed, or Star Wars Illusion 2 Destiny expansion. I'm only a couple missions in. I played the Edge of Fate a little bit and really bounced off of it. This was Edge of Fate from the summertime. And so I was looking forward to Renegades. I bought the package that had both of them in it, so I've got the story content, and I'm loving it. I mean, anytime I fall back into Destiny, I just fall back into Destiny, right? Because the gunplay is still so good. Like, the grind may not always make sense. It may, the amount of content isn't what it used to be, but that gunplay is still very enjoyable. And if you are, as somebody who has followed Destiny lore from its beginning, you have to, there's a little bit of suspension of belief of how do you get into these scenarios that feel very, there are visual, like the opening sequence is A New Hope's opening. Like you've got the grifter ship coming, across the screen, and this big other ship shooting at it, like the Star Destroyer does in A New Hope. And on the grifter ship, you've got many of your existing Destiny characters, some of your Destiny characters, like Eris is there along with a new character, and you've got to launch to get down to they're getting sucked into a tractor beam, right? And you've got to get down to the escape pods, and your ghost is deciphering a code and storing it on his, on your little circular robot, but then your first mission takes you into basically what is it's a cabal, the big guys from Mars, but their ships that they are using feel very much like the hangars of Star Destroyers. So you're moving around that. You've got some spaces where there's an allusion to the shield generator shutdown that Obi-Wan has to do in A New Hope. So like it's having some fun with it, but still keeping some Destiny flair. That there are enemies that very much are modeled like ATST in terms of your biped walker. I've seen some other clips where you end up on a desert planet. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Mars, but it also looks a whole lot like Tatooine, and you've got a big palace that looks like Jabba's palace in the background. And so they're having some, given the state of where Destiny is, I'm glad that it looks like the developers had some fun with this, because it's been a rough go for Destiny and whatever developers are left there at Bungie. So they also have come out this week and said, this is our only planned kind of cross medium, synergy. There's no other plans. We're not making this a Fortnite. But at the same time, they do a pretty good job of it. It works pretty well. So I'm enjoying it. I'm coming into the holiday season where I know I'm going to have some more time to play games. I'm glad to have Destiny to go back and poke at and not feel like I need to rush through it for the power, curve and the number gain. I just want to play around in these Star Wars like first person levels, because we don't often get Star Wars like first person levels in this definition. So that's my quick hit on Renegades. It's better than I expected. and I'm thankful for it.
So if I talk about the best Destiny campaigns across Destiny 1 and 2, and we talk about names like Forsaken, The Final Shape, which I didn't
Witch
play,
Queen.
The Witch Queen, absolutely, Taken King,
Yep.
and
Those
actually
are, those are pretty. Yeah, Red War, you could say. Yeah.
yeah, I was a huge fan of the Red War campaign. So is this thing? Do you feel like this thing has any kind of chance to pierce that veil, or are we talking like a mid-tier campaign?
I would. I mean, from again, I'm not through it. It sounds like it's about 8 hours of a campaign, which isn't too bad for a Destiny expansion. I'm feeling like it is high end of mid tier, right? And I don't know that Destiny is ever going to be able to match those types of campaigns because they were all in service to this larger Dark Light Traveler saga, right? They work because they're building on so much else. Like this works as a side story, and it's a pretty fun side story. It feels more effective than the last one, and it certainly feels more effective than uh, some of the other ones that are tied in to the Dark Light. You know, whatever the one on the moon. I can't remember what that one was. Right, there's been plenty of odds and ends, but I think Destiny is in a hard place because it doesn't have the staff to rebuild to make something big and new. It doesn't have the narrative space to. They're not trying to build something again, or at least, I mean, they're not at that stage of building something like they had, and so this feels a real middle ground. And uh, yeah, I'm glad to have one more reason to go back to Destiny that didn't just throw me off of it like Edge of Fate did.
We don't have to get into it tonight, but one thing that I am curious about is we talked last episode or maybe 2 episodes ago about like how do you wrangle this thing, right? You've built this huge legacy. It's kind of impossible to continue that, but you say you don't want to reboot it. And I wonder if this Renegades thing like does well, like I've never understood like how all the Lego blocks in Warframe fit together. But I still like going back to Warframe periodically.
Sure, right? Yeah, you can just enjoy the game without necessarily understanding why you're transported back to 1999.
And that game's been going on for was it a 2009 game? Like, so I wonder if maybe the way
13.
forward. Yeah,
13? Right
maybe.
before Destiny. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if the way forward for Destiny 2 is just keep it simple. Like stop trying to do the whole epic thing. Just make these guys the Green Lanterns and just tell a 6-issue comic book arc,
Right.
that
Yeah.
changes right every single time. Don't worry about continuity. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think like you could certainly go in that direction. And this is kind of one of those. Like it's a limited series, right? It tells this individual story. It certainly sets up a bad guy that you could come back to, right? So we'll see. But it's I would love it if that's the case. Whether or not Sony is willing to throw enough money at it to make this something that happens more frequently is going to be a different question. So we talked about Madden a little bit earlier when I got on my soapbox and said that I've got one more year left in me, but you are playing Madden right now as well.
Yeah, and I'll keep it pretty quick. Also playing this on the Xbox Series X, having a great time. Maybe having, I guess, a great time. Playing the Cincinnati Bengals. It has been a painful season. Like,
So are you with Burrow, or have you? Is it effectively playing Flacco?
It's Joe Burrow. I don't think Flacco's on my roster. I don't think. I could be wrong.
No, because you probably started with beginning of season rather than like mid-year updates type of thing.
So Burrow is like a 99 rated quarterback in Madden NFL. So doesn't seem to be playing like it, or at least his wide receivers aren't. I don't know what's going on. But I'm getting to the point now. So in this new way that I'm kind of approaching gaming, where I'm not focused as highly on playing like the zeitgeist games and more focused on playing like these games that I can go in and I can spend like 100 hours in. With Madden, because I've been playing it. I've had some continuity of playing it a few weeks in a row. Now I'm watching. I can't remember the guy's name, but watching this guy's channel, CB Gaming, and so I'm like watching videos on like how do you manage your team like in the off season, and because it's gotten significantly more complex than when I used to do that stuff very heavily, like in the early 2000s. So I spent this week going in and like looking at everybody that I have to re-sign next year, like running calculations on where I am on like the salary cap, listening to this guy's recommendations of like positions that I need to re-sign and positions that I don't need to worry about it. Like, because I'm like, if these players suck already, like I'm not going to pay them big dollars, right, to re-sign them next year.
Nope. Not worth anybody that's not over an 80.
Yeah. I've got I have really good cornerbacks. My third string corner, who obviously comes in on plays with like 4 wide and on dime formations and stuff, is asking for a lot of money because he's really good. But it's clear that what his feeling is that he can go somewhere else and be a starter. So he's asking us for a lot of money, and I'm like, well, I mean, you've clearly telegraphed what you really want to do, and like his interest level in re-signing is very low. I'm like, so yeah, we're not gonna do that. I've got a very aging center, who is not one of the marquee positions that you're supposed to recruit for. But I'm like, but this guy, he's not an 80, he's like a 78 or a 79, and I'm like, I don't really want to like change out like a center, or to spend the time going to look like a 78 or 79 is like good enough. But he's being difficult. So he wants a 1-year contract, and I'm like, no, like if I'm going to sign you, I want to sign you for a while because I want you to be with Burrow like for 3 or 4 more years, right?
No, you bring over a tackle that is good, that is in second string, and he can start on your like. The nice thing about the rosters is you can move people around that way.
Yes, I don't think I have anybody else who's
Fair enough.
that high. So, but it's fun, right? Because this is the stuff we've talked about, right? That I'm like, yes, it's awesome to be on the field, but it's also very cool, like to get into like all the mechanics and stuff. I clearly, so another thing that I have not been paying attention to because I, haven't been like playing this game, consecutively for 20 something years. There's a part in the coaches management thing that is about it said buying upgrades, and so when I saw that, I just like I'm not messing with that.
In your coach tree,
but I went into it, and now, I need to pay attention to it.
You should be paying attention to that. Yep,
because it definitely, I could see where it definitely would get rid of some of my frustrations, like the Spider-Man like adhesiveness that happens when you are when you're rushing the O-line, and then you see the running back coming by you, and I'm like, okay, I want to stop being engaged in my block with this guy and go after the running back, but I can't because this guy has me like in a freaking spider web and I can't get loose from him. So, but yeah, those coach stacks help with that. So I'm starting to invest more time in that, starting to pay more attention to my coaching staff.
Nice.
So it's interesting, and I'm kind of getting into that too, in the vestiges of that with football club and MLB. So it's enjoyable to play these games that, for me, again, it's not necessarily the PvP stuff, but again, it's still like the things that I could spend dozens and dozens of hours in and start really breaking down these systems and really getting into it. So having a good time.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's fun. I'm in year 5 of a series, a franchise that we started back in August. So to the point where, I had a rookie quarterback who I developed up and threw like crazy, and he got to like 98, 99, and then wanted some insane amount for his new contract off of his rookie year. And I'm like, nah, sorry. And I, trade him away for a couple first round picks and picked up somebody else. And like, nope, you're not worth 120 million a year. And so, but it's nice. I mean, that's half the fun, is all that management piece and the juggling. And that's the same with sports game, like whether it's baseball, football, or football, soccer, or basketball, like that management sim aspect of it is always something that's enjoyable.
That is probably definitely the fate of Dax Hill as well. He's very much set himself up to be traded. But I do want to hear about this game because I was playing Red Dead Redemption earlier this year. So
So Red Dead Redemption this week came out with their next gen patch. So if you're an owner of Red Dead Redemption whether it's on Switch, PS4, and Xbox. The PS5 patch is up and running. If you've got PS Premium, it's right there. HDR looks great. The models, this is a PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 game. The models sure look like that still, but they're, the textures aren't great, but they look pretty good. If you owned the Switch edition that came out, I think last year, maybe 2 years ago, it's a free upgrade as well to the Switch 2 edition. Played the Switch 2 edition both in handheld and on docked, and it's nice to be running around Red Dead in handheld. Looks really good, plays really smoothly. The character models in the Switch edition in both docked and handheld don't look as good as they do on the PlayStation 5, which isn't a surprise. But one of the things that did hold up really well was HDR from Switch 2 to PS5, like really close in terms of the use of HDR in the outdoor scenes and the kind of graphical fidelity running on Switch 2. So that's, doesn't change what the game is. It just makes it a whole lot more palatable to look at in a modern era. On Xbox, I own it digitally, and it seems to be kind of rolling out strangely. Like, I'm on Reddit, people who own it digitally still aren't seeing the patch for free, seeing like a discounted price for it. So we'll see what that looks like. But I actually picked up Red Dead Redemption on Switch over the Thanksgiving holiday on sale for like $20, and knowing that the patch was coming out. And so it was a nice open world game for Switch 2 to play. So yeah, if you own it, load it back up on your PlayStation 5 Pro, and it's going to look pretty good.
So on Xbox, do you have any semblance of like a quick 2-sentence explanation or explainer on? So supposedly earlier this year, when PS5 got the paid update, the argument was that upgrade or its equivalent is already on Xbox.
Yes.
Via backwards compatibility. So what's different about this new one on Xbox? Because that's the Xbox version is the one that I played through earlier this year.
So from my understanding, and maybe it's not complete. So I know that Red Dead, the PlayStation 3 edition of Red Dead, that if you own that, or the Xbox 360 edition, if you own the Xbox 360 edition of Red Dead, when the Xbox One X came out, they did an HDR patch at that point. So what, 2018, 2017, somewhere around there, right? Like, think around there was a patch, which was actually why I picked it up on Xbox at the time, was that it was already buffed to run on, yes, as Hero Down Under. Yep. Looking good. So it's, what I don't know is that I don't think it's been optimized yet to run on Series X. So it's still running the more modified edition, but not necessarily the kind of current gen edition.
Okay. I think I follow that. I'll probably have to go back to this podcast and listen to it again.
Boot it up, see what it looks like. Yeah, and as Hero Donner said, it looks pretty stunning on PlayStation 5. So definitely looks really good. I mean, it's still the game that it was when it launched. I'm still failing a mission because I fell too far behind in an escort mission, right? Those things still happen. It's still a Rockstar game. So,
little known secret, but that remote control helicopter mission in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, for years I could not complete that mission. For years, I don't know if I've told you, I thought I've mentioned this before. I finally was able to get past that mission and play the rest of GTA Vice City because it it became available on Android, and I was able to play it on the NVIDIA Shield and the handheld Shield. And the handheld Shield had this button you would press to flip control schemes, which is what I had to do, because I had to, like, when I was in like third person view and then shifted to the helicopter, I think on PlayStation or wherever and on PC, like the controls were always inverted on the helicopter. And I'm like, flying an RC copter, I can't fly like that. So finally I was able to get past that on the NVIDIA Shield handheld, because I could hit this button and immediately flip to a different control scheme and then immediately flip back.
Nice. Yeah, the last thing I want to say is it's great. I'm glad that Rockstar is doing this. I'm looking forward to someday giving Red Dead Redemption 2 a shot when it gets a patch upgrade as well, but we're not there yet. So one last game to talk about. Last week you talked about Trackmania a little bit, and you got some more Trackmania today.
Yeah, I won't go into it too much. I'm at that point where I'm on the final tier of this season's tracks 20 or 21 through 25, which requires you to have a gold medal on all preceding 20 tracks. I anticipate, I'm not there yet, but I anticipate that will be mind-numbingly frustrating. So my norm at this point is I go to where I log into the game and I just try. My objective when I log in is I just want to complete one track and get a gold, and then I will just do that for like the next few weeks. Probably won't be able to finish it, but surprisingly, I logged in on this last session and I was actually able to knock out 7 tracks for a gold medal. Again, not high hopes, because there are some tracks, I think I was showing one of them on the video stream last week, that like just to get a bronze, I like had to run that track like 20 something times.
Yeah, there was definitely a track in the video stream last week where you just continued to crash into a side. So
yes, yeah. But I'm having fun with it. I am playing it on PC, and so at this point in the season, now that I feel like I've done as much as is known practical that I will be able to complete, without grinding myself to the bone. Now I'm starting to like just play some like random like club tracks. So I'm playing this pack of tracks that somebody made that's like, it's like 10 tracks, but like to get gold on them, they're super short, but they're incredibly tight and twisty, and like to get golds on them you have to complete the tracks in like 10 seconds. So, but even to get silver and bronze, they're like 13 second, 15 second, 18 second like things. So pretty interesting, like short track stuff, but very, very fun to play. So continuing to have a good time with that as well. I think I must have bought like a lifetime, like this is a thing that like is free to play, but typically they ask you to sign up for like a year at a time. But I don't think I signed up. I think it's been longer than a year. So I think I bought some type of lifetime thing.
There was, when they went to this model, there was a way to like a perpetuity, a lifetime. Okay. Yep, that was definitely one of their pricing structures. I do remember that.
Yeah, so I have it on my list to try and play it on PlayStation this week, and it's going to be interesting to find out like if my account connects and I have the same entitlement
carry over. Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, this week we got a couple other games. This week is the Jeff Keighley Game Awards, so we'll get some press around that. We'll get some announcements of new games that are being teased. We've got a couple of new games or new releases, at least not necessarily new games. So Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader, which is the CRPG, coming to Switch 2. 2 different Yakuza games are coming to Xbox and PlayStation 5 in terms of kind of current gen upgrades to those, Yakuza 0 and Kiwami. And then Microsoft Flight Simulator is coming to PlayStation 5. So not necessarily new games, but new releases for new platforms. All right. Well, Game Logic, I thought we were going to have a short show tonight, but that was not the case. So, which is great. We always have good conversations. I appreciate it. And nothing like being able to poke each other back and forth and continue to engage with conversation, both with you, Zeus, and also with everybody in chat. Hero Down Under, Soltech, Nate. Who else was here? Glad to have you. If you are joining us and listening, but you didn't drop into the comments, please do. We're always glad to have you. And as you saw tonight, we're glad to and look forward to engaging with your comments and thoughts and dialogue as well. So this has been probably our final regular episode of the year. It is likely that we will be heading into our superlative shows for the next 2 shows. We usually do a double recording there over 2 nights and release them before we take a holiday break and join you back in the beginning of the new year. The timing of all that, we're still kind of working out. But we'll have Ty will be here. Chances are we'll probably get Swissguard back as well for a year-end wrap-up. But until then, this has been episode 415 of Enough to Keep Going. I have been your host, DBQ Hams. Zeus Adamas, thanks for joining me, running the boards, keeping us steady and stable, at least as much as we could in this era and time that we live. So play the games you love. Love those you play with. Be kind to yourself out there, everybody. Take care and have a good night.